Real productivity is a kind of stillness in motion. It's not the frantic keystrokes of a writer chasing a deadline, or the 1,000-yard stare of a manager watching their 5th productivity webinar of the month, and it has nothing to do with apps or tools or hacks. Real productivity rarely feels like work. We think of effort as the metric: more effort, more output, more pushing, more success. We conjure the Protestant work ethic, bootstrap stories and overachievers with early alarms and color-coded calendars. But many of the people who make a lasting mark on the world, inventors, writers, scientists, reformers, even generals, they weren't sprinting all the time. If there is a secret, if there's an ancient art of productivity, it might be this: stop trying so hard. The Chinese concept of Wu Wei is one of the oldest and most counterintuitive ideas in philosophy. Literally translated, it means non-action, but not in the sense of idleness. It's not doing nothing, it's doing without forcing. It's the effortless action of someone so attuned to their environment that their moves feel natural, even inevitable. Taoist philosophers like Lao Tzu observed how water wears down stone. It's not by brute force, it's by flowing along its natural course. Water does not struggle against obstacles, it moves around them. And when we stop trying to force outcomes, we become like water, able to find the low paths, the subtle routes that are invisible to the bulldozers. Wu Wei is not resignation, it's both intelligence and resilience, and it takes a kind of courage to stop flailing. Try too hard and you miss the point. Let go, and suddenly the point appears, sitting there quietly where it's always been. Western philosophy has its own version. Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, proposes the idea of the golden mean. Virtue lies between deficiency and excess, courage between cowardice and recklessness, generosity between stinginess and wastefulness. This has obvious applications for ethics, but it applies just as easily to action. Over-effort is its own kind of vice. The person who micromanages every task, who aims for perfect efficiency, who obsesses over productivity techniques, this person is not wise. They're anxious. Their striving becomes a vice disguised as virtue. Productive restraint means knowing when not to act, when to pause, observe, and allow. It's a form of practical wisdom. Phronesis, a term Aristotle used for the kind of know-how that lets someone navigate complex, shifting situations. Abstract knowledge, a sensitivity to the moment. Napoleon Bonaparte, for all his flaws, understood this intuitively. He instructed his secretary not to open his mail for several days. Most problems, he found, resolved themselves before he had to address them. The urgent became unimportant, and fires burnt out on their own. Napoleon focused on what mattered, not on what screamed the loudest. And there's a kind of triage in effective work. You let the small, self-resolving issues fade, while giving disproportionate energy to what actually moves the needle. Modern productivity culture reverses this. Notifications are treated like marching orders. We react instantly and then wonder why nothing big ever gets done. Everything is urgent, and when everything is urgent, nothing actually. We live in an age of hustle porn. Instagram influencers post time-lapse videos of 4 a.m. wake-ups, and founders brag about 100-hour work weeks. Everyone is optimizing, tracking, logging, and we're all supposed to be brands, rising and grinding. But thought doesn't happen on a treadmill. Insight is not something you can brute force. Einstein came up with relativity while riding a streetcar. Newton watched apples fall. Archimedes had his eureka moment in the bar. Breakthroughs can actually look like rest. They happen after a walk, in a moment of boredom, in the white space between tasks. The mind needs idleness to connect the dots. Not empty laziness, but open space, structured non-structure. There is a scene in The Brothers Karamazov where Father Zosima speaks of active love, a love expressed through patient, quiet, difficult labor, not through theatrics. And the same could be said of real work. The people doing the most often talk about it the least, and when they do talk, they don't sound tired, and they don't perform. In chess, a good player often wins not by attacking, but by restraining. They hold the tension, they wait, they provoke, and then only when the position demands it do they strike. In Go, a game even older and more subtle, whole strategies are built on indirect influence. You surround the opponent, you let them overextend. It's a kind of patience that's hard to teach, because it feels like losing. In reality, it's composure, strategic restraint, a willingness to trust the unfolding shape of the board. Our own work lives have boards too, but we don't often see them. We're busy moving pieces without understanding the game. More meetings, more deadlines, and more systems. But what if the most effective move was no move? Wu Wei is not a tactic. The golden mean is not a hack. These are not entries in your Notion dashboard. They are dispositions, orientations toward the world. Because the problem with modern productivity culture is not that it values output. It's that it values the appearance of effort over intelligent restraint. A person who gets something done in 3 hours is often seen as less dedicated than the one who takes 12. But time spent is not value created, and struggle is not proof of virtue. There is a reason the Stoics favored few words and clear actions. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man in the world, took time each morning to remind himself that he controlled very little, only his own reasoned choices, and everything else was noise. What does it mean to do less? Not performatively, not ironically, not as a branding exercise? It might mean saying no more often than yes, answering fewer emails, leaving space in the calendar, letting a problem sit for a while before you fix it, and allowing an idea to ripen before you execute. It would be a mistake to call this passivity. It's the discipline of trusting the process, and of not mistaking motion for progress, of resisting the impulse to fill every moment. Modernity is hostile to this mindset. You will be praised for being overwhelmed, and you will be rewarded for burning out. But there are other ways of living, and some of the oldest traditions on Earth point to them. Wu Wei, the golden mean, phronesis, stoic detachment. None of these offer easy comfort. They ask you to be still when it would feel better to scramble, to think when it would feel better to react, and to observe when you'd rather jump in. But there is power in the pause, and there is momentum in restraint. The people who learn to act naturally, intelligently, in time with the rhythm of the world, and these people tend to build things that last. The others? Well, they're still optimizing their morning routines.